Right, morning everybody. So we've been talking about rentals. Last week we spoke about the effect of the market crash, or the so-called market crash, and I just wanted to touch bases with that. So the four things that we spoke about are the effects of lockdown, and the fact that there's maybe a glut of stock on the market, and people are reassessing their lives, and there's an impact on affordability. So we know that. We also know that the arrears has gone up slightly, but not significantly. So the people that are telling us that this rental crash is there, not so sure about it. It is certainly in certain markets. What we did understand is over 25,000 rand, a quarter of the place is standing empty. Now that's a significant amount. At the moment, about 11% of places are standing empty under that. So these are all the things that we've spoken about. The effect of interest rates, we knew that it makes it affordable to buy rather than to rent. And that, I think, is a real factor. But I don't know that it's a market driver of the rental collapse, as so-called. Not sure about that. But the bottom line is that everything that we spoke about there has got to do with price counselling. And we discussed for quite a while how to price counsel, and the fact that it's not an opinion, that you should only expose your landlords to the facts and what else is on the market. So, okay, given that, now what do we do? Now we're talking about a new thing. We're talking about vetting the client. Now, this is it's a very simple process, but I think agents get confused about what their role and responsibility is. Okay, so let me just share my screen and you can see what I've written down. There. Do you all see that? Yeah, cool. Okay, so what is applications and what is vetting? So the bottom line is that we get a tenant that applies to something. Now remember, what is a tenant? A tenant, in the first instance, the guy that has made an application is the friendliest guy in the world. You often consider that you should become his friend immediately, invite him over to dinner, and perhaps even come on your Christmas holiday, because you've never met such a nice guy before. And his family is so nice, and his wife's awesome. And you think, where have you been all my life? You are my closest friend, and you've only met him for 12 minutes. I must warn you, though, that that's a very temporary thing, because the tenants become realistic and change a little bit over a period of time. So what I'm trying to say to you is you need to be a little bit careful when you deal with applications. Our job is only to collect data. So what we do is we collect all the data, we package it, and we present it to the landlord. We express no opinion on the person. So remember, when the landlord says to you, what do you think of this client? You must not think anything. You must say to him, I don't think anything. What I do know about him is that he's got a pay slip, he's got an ID book, he's got bank statements, and he's got a credit check, and this is the result of it. They all tally, or there's something missing, or that. You don't express an opinion on whether he's a good tenant or not. Why? Because it doesn't matter. Remember, he's the friendliest guy in the world, and even if you like him, it's going to explode. Because if he doesn't pay rent, the landlord's going to say, you told me that this guy was awesome. It's your fault that I'm missing out on my 15,000 rand a month. I want my commission back, and I want you to pay me back for my damages. So just bear that in mind. So what is an application? Application is that one-page form. It asks him for all these details. It asks him for a amount of his income. It tells you how much the rent's going to be. It tells him what his ID number is. But the most important thing is right at the bottom. There's a little thing that says, I give consent for you to do a credit check on me. Without that consent, we can't do a credit check, and it's illegal. And the ramifications are quite serious. If you do a credit check on somebody without their permission, it's a significant, I think it's a criminal act in terms of the act. It's not nothing. It's very serious. So we do need that. We need the ID book and the permission. Those two things give us the power. So then we do the credit check. Now, credit checks is a whole other. I'll do a training exercise on how to read a credit check, a credit report. It's not as easy as you think, and there are many things to look at. So it's not that we're not looking at that now. All we do, though, is we get the credit report, and we look at the credit report, and what are we actually looking for? We're just looking for, are there any judgments? Are there any big outstanding judgments? And does the credit report make sense? It'll also tell you where he's employed. It'll tell you all sorts of good stuff that helps you build a profile of this person. Once we've got the credit report, we get the ID documents, we've got the bank statements, and we've got the pay slips. Now, I don't like to send the pay slips or the bank statements to the owner. It's got nothing to do with the owner. But if the owner wants to see them, I believe you should get it in writing from the tenant. I think you should email the tenant and say, look, the tenant, the landlord has asked to look at your pay slip and your bank statements. Are you happy with that? And then you get it in writing. Because the Poppy is coming in. And Poppy says that if you distribute information like that, that is a criminal offense. And if that gets lost or it's used by something inappropriately, you're responsible. So there's a chain of custody that has to be maintained. So I can't just say, I've got your ID books on file here, ID copies on file as because you're agents. If I use that now because somebody says, hey, listen, I need Alan's ID book to give him a license for a car, and that goes skew and there's fraud involved, I'm responsible for this chain of custody being broken. The document was not used for the purpose of being handing out for other people. It wasn't ever intended for vehicles. It was only intended for the lease, or in this case that I'm talking about, for Alan's employment. So be careful of that. So we collect these documents and then we collate the data. Now, what does collate the data means? It means that we put the landlord at ease. We send him a little email saying, look, I've had a look at this tenant. He is employed. I've confirmed his employment. I've confirmed his salary according to his payslip, and that tallies with his bank statements. And I've confirmed that his affordability is there. That means he's earning 3 times more than the rental on a gross feely figure. But if the guy's got lots of accounts and lots of stuff going on, you actually look at the bank statement and say, look, you've got like 5 private loans, you've got 2 cars, you're paying for varsity, you have no more money left over. How are you going to pay for this? So you need to do it both ways. You need to do like a very overhead arching saying, okay, 3 times the rental gets you into the door, but it doesn't get you the place. You need to look at affordability. How much money, what is your disposable income, and can it pay for the rent? So that data is then collected and you present it to the landlord. And the landlord only has to know that the facts are true. Yes, he is a citizen. Yes, he's got an ID book. Yes, he has got a credit check. His credit check shows no judgments. I've looked at his bank statements and they tie up with his salary slip. I have phoned his employer and said, does Bob Smith work here? Yes, he does. Thank you very much. Then you know the pay slip's right. The bank statements reflect the income. The bank statements also reflect the outgoing. And you know what the net disposable income is, and we can say that disposable income, that amount at the end of the month, if we take it for rental, is enough to cover the rent. Okay, so you don't make any judgment calls. If you get 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 applications, you do that 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times, as many times as you want. And you can quite quickly get rid of people that aren't suitable. And then you present the landlord with maybe 2 options. And he says, okay, which one do you want to use? And he says, I don't want anybody. It's not my house, not my decision. I don't warrant them. I don't do anything. But I can guarantee, and what I do warrant and what I do for my commission is I can assure you that he is employed where he said he was, because I've checked. I've spoken to his previous landlord and he didn't burn the place down and he paid on time. He's a very nice guy. I've seen that his pay slips reflected on his bank statement, and his bank statements reflect that he is affordably correct. He can afford the place. So that's your job. There's no, we don't ever express an opinion. And like I've said, if you express an opinion, you're going to get smashed by the landlord. Is going to come down on you and say, you promised me, you boo, owe me. And you don't want to ever do that. You just remind the guy, I have no opinion about this tenant. Because why? And you get this quite a lot though. You get people saying, but hang on, you have to give me some indication of whether it is good or bad. And you say, what does it matter what I think? There's no experience in the world that can lead me to give you a sound answer to a question like that. Because a guy can get retrenched in this 2020. I mean, you've seen what's happened this year. How can I know? I mean, SAA closed down for 6 months. Now, if SAA can go out of business, anybody can go out of business. So how do we know? We don't know. It's not our call. Okay. So then we get tenants who come to us with very special cases, and this is where you need to be a little bit careful and a little bit clever. So a typical case is a tenant who says, look, my husband did lose his job, and the reason we're selling our house is because we need to move into a flat when we need to downscale. But if I give you my credit report, if I allow you to look at it, you're going to see a judgment, or you're going to see arrears. You're going to see blisters. It's a problem. I'm telling you this up front. Can you still help me? Now, in the old days, when rentals was hot and there was lots of people, we would say, no, we're sorry, we can't help you. These days, I think we can help them, and we have to help them. Because why? Over this year, the agony and the pain and the economic downturn that we've gone through, there are very, very few people that have got a nice, clean credit record. In fact, it's the exception, not the rule anymore. So you need to prime your tenant, your landlords, and you need to say to them, I've done a credit check, and there is a problem, and I've discussed it with the tenant, and here are the reasons. Husband lost his job. Husband found a new job 3 months later. They couldn't pay their accounts. The accounts are now being caught up. It doesn't reflect badly. It's a reality of modern life. Okay, so it's not an outstanding thing from 5 years ago where they didn't pay a Fashini's account and they never bothered to clear it up. No, this is a direct result of a lockdown or a job loss or a retrenchment or something like that. And if you can explain it, remember, you don't have to, there's no rule that says that a landlord can't take a person who's got no credit, who's got no money. He can put anybody in his house. It's his house. He can decide. What we have to do is give him the facts to make the decision. Okay, so the affordability test, that's actually a credit check, a credit test that we use. And it's it's a requirement, but it's not the rule. Because why? I mean, if you're applying for a bond, they will say, Anton, how much do you earn? 10 grand. You can afford a 3,000 rand a month bond, but you've got a judgment. We're not lending you the money because we're the bank and we don't lend money to people like you. And then I have to go, oh, well, don't worry, I'll go and rent. Okay. Now, the landlord who sees Anton says, Anton, how much do you earn? 10 grand. Well, you can afford 3 grand. Yes, I can. But you've got credit problems coming out of your ears. Yes, I know. I was retrenched over lockdown. You know what? I still want you in my house. And he can do that. There's no rule to say he can't, but you cannot recommend it. So what we need to do is motivate stuff quite clearly. And if you talk to the Jennies, the bond originators of the world, this is what they do for a living. They motivate as to why we should, or the landlord should, consider a person who doesn't typically fall within the rule set, who may be somewhat different. Okay. So if a person's got a credit problem, they've been downscaled with that, you need to present it to the landlord. Look, this is what happened. The husband got retrenched. He has got another job. He's earning far less. They can't afford their current place. They want to move into another place. Here's their bank statements. I've spoken to their previous landlord. They were awesome. I've spoken to the new job. They're employed. Their bank statements, and their pay slips, they correlate nicely. Yes, they've got blemishes on their credit report, but they are a result of a lockdown, not a result of just somebody who doesn't mismanage their money. They are. I would like you to consider them as a tenant. I'm not recommending them. I don't vouch for them. I do nothing. All I'm saying is you want to give them the chance. So, but that's going to happen more and more. And in the past, remember that landlords in the past could pick and choose tenants. Nowadays, places are standing empty. They've got no longer the luxury of choosing who their tenant's going to be. And landlords are going to learn that quite fast. So I think more and more landlords are going to have to expose themselves to people that they know have got credit problems, that they know are in financial difficulty, because that's the reality of life. I mean, nearly everybody I know has been through a tough time. I don't know anybody that hasn't had like a good whipping over the last 6 months. I mean, who is this person? And that person's typically not going to want to rent. They got money. They're going to be living in Sun City or wherever they live. Okay. So the people that are dealing with rentals are people that are probably impacted on by the current economy. And the landlords are going to have to understand that, and they will understand it. So it's not our job so remember, and this is a long way of saying to you, don't look at a credit report and say, oh, judgment, nah, not taking the guy. That's not right. If somebody gets divorced and their husband leaves them and they got 2 children and they got a good job and they have a blister on their credit report as a result of that, that's not a good reason not to let them rent somewhere. That person is probably the best payer in the world. Okay, so on the other side of the coin is anybody you put in there who's got a job and is absolutely 100% may not be like that tomorrow. They can easily get retrenched, and then you're back to square one. Okay, so what do you do with this person that comes to you with a credit thing? And I hear this quite a bit. Okay, I'll pay 6 months rent up front. Now, when a person tells me they're going to pay 6 months rent up front, I hear My brain says, I'm going to pay 6 months rent. I'm never paying rent again because I don't have any more money. And I only want to get the money up out of my bank account because I'm going to get attached by the sheriff anyway. And I'm going to become a professional squatter and it's going to be your fault. Lekker. Remember, friendliest bloke in the world, you can trust me. I'm going to pay it up front. I don't like that. Okay. So what I don't recommend you do that, although we have done it, but it's not cool. The better way to do it is to say to the person, you want to pay 6 months up front? I've got a better idea. Pay 3 months deposit and start paying your rent from day one. Why? Because then we've got 3 months of the deposit. And on the very first day that guy misses his first rental, you move for eviction. You've got 3 months of deposit to use against him in a lawsuit, and it gives you time. And if it's really dodgy and you're really scared, take 6 months deposit. Why not? But don't take it as rental. You don't, because what happens to a person who's paid the money up front, I know, I've met me and I'm the same and you the same. If you give me 6 months, if I pay 6 months up front, I don't have every month's income. I don't keep that rent aside. No, I spend it. I increase my lifestyle. My brand of beer goes from Castle to Stella Artois. Eh? And I don't go shave myself anymore. No, I'll go to the barber. And after 6 months of living like royalty, I have suddenly a bit of a reality check where, oh shit, this month I've got to pay rent. Where do I get the money from? I've increased my lifestyle. I bought a PlayStation. I've signed up for the interwebs. So I'm paying all these other bills. My son's taking up karate. What now? And so the money goes. So rather make sure that what you're trying to instill in the tenant is that there's a monthly payment required from day one until day end. 1 year later, that end of that beginning of that last month, you're paying rent. The deposit we keep aside and make the deposit as big as you like. I think it's going to become more and more common to have deposits of over 1 month. And don't be scared to ask for a month and a half, 2 months deposit. Just do it. If you can get away with a month and a half deposit, you just make your life better. Because the tenant doesn't pay on that last month, you've still got money set aside. Because the most popular sport in rentals is that the tenant says, I'm just not paying the last month, use my deposit. And then when you find that the oak built a fire in the lounge and you have to replace the carpets and the roof, there's no money. And you can't get it from a tenant because tenants haven't got money. I know in the Western Cape and certain other towns, you pay 2 months deposit or 3. There's no maybes about it. It just is like that. You just pay. And you can't not. So I would suggest to you, if you at all concerned about the person, bump the deposit up to a month and a half or 2 months. And if they don't have money for that, at least get a key and cleaning deposit. So if the rent is 10 grand, say to them, oh, there's a 2,000 rand key and cleaning deposit. 2,000 rand is at least something that you can use in that last month. Nobody wants to lose 2 grand, so they'll clean up a bit. And 2 grand goes quite a nice way to paint the walls, or it's something. So this is where you get in your living. You guys are the pros. So those are the rental things. The application and permission to do the credit check. The credit check itself is important. We'll go over how to read a credit check, the documents that are required. You collate the data and you present it to the landlord for his approval. Then you sign the lease, and it's done. Then the landlord phones you 3 months later and says the tenant's not paying, and you say, "I'm sorry, Mr. Landlord, this is not a managed lease, is it? No. So why are you phoning me? I did the placement." Yeah, but you said the guy. I said nothing. All I said to you was this tenant has matched the criteria to move into your place. He's got a salary. He's got a pay slip. He's got an ID book. He's got a credit check. He's got bank statements. They all tie together. So at that point in time, he appeared to be a tenant that was suitable for your place. You chose him. I didn't decide on anything. I only showed you the data. The fact that he's lost his job, got divorced, his dog died, and he's moving to Canada has got nothing to do with me, and I couldn't have foreseen it. We're not clairvoyant, okay? And you need to be very upfront with landlords while you're doing it. Rather don't get a rental than have a rental placement where the expectation from the landlord is that you are going to fix it. And landlords often say, why should I pay you the commission? When the guy leaves, are you going to pay me back? Absolutely not. I'm not paying you back. I get my commission based on the promise of the lease, and you can exercise your rights in terms of the lease and sue the tenant for money. You don't come to me. I'm not the bank. I'm not the warrantor. I don't give you any written prescription or surety or warranty that this tenant's going to turn out. That's stupid. And you have to talk to the landlord that they understand this, that they've got no lien on you. Where they have got a lien on you, if you haven't done your homework. If you've said to him, I phoned the company, the guy's got a job, and he hasn't, that's where you're wrong. That's where you're going to pay. If you've said to him, no, I spoke to the guy's old landlord, and the landlord loves him, and you didn't do that, and the guy finds out, that's professional misconduct. I mean, you're going to get sued, and it's gross negligence. It's beyond that. I mean, it's ridiculous. So don't do that. So we do everything as best we can. Choice is theirs. We warrant nothing. Well, I don't want to pay you the commission because the guy's going to leave and I'm going to lose my money. Well, that's the risk you're going to take. So don't take my tenant in. I'll take him somewhere else. Let your place stand empty. Okay. And remember, what happens if the guy moves out? Are you going to pay me my money back? Don't be ridiculous. Why would I do that? You know, I mean, that's not how it works. But how it does work is I'm going to give you a document that you can take to court and you can sue the guy and you will win. That's what I'll get paid for. It's a legally binding document. We've done all the homework up front. We've vetted the tenant properly. Everything is in a position, I beg your pardon, for you just to simply proceed with it. But what happens? The landlords turn to the softest target. So the first thing they do is they take the deposit and say, I'm not paying the deposit. Next thing they turn to you, Mr. Fundafender, you gave me a bad tenant. I'm taking my money back. I want you to pay me all my commission back. What? Why don't you use the lease and go to court and sue the guy properly? No, that's too much effort. I'd rather just lean on you. Well, I've got bad news for you. I'm not getting lent on, and I'm not party to it, and I'm not paying you. My deal was to place somebody. Your deal was to look after them, make sure the place was right. Because there's always two sides to the story. It's very seldom that there's absolute, pure, virtuous landlord that does nothing wrong, and he's so awesome. I mean, obviously it happens, but there's always there can be conflict in these things always. And now you've got this argy-bargy, and you don't want to get involved in that. I mean, how are you ever going to decide who was the bad guy? And it's got nothing to do with you. The lease agreement is the document that decides who's the bad guy. The lease agreement is the document that the court can use to recover the money. So why doesn't he use it? And remember, the landlord doesn't have to go to court. He goes to the tribunal. It's a very good process, very fast process. And the tribunal doesn't pick on you. So when a landlord says, I'm going to take you to tribunal because you're a bad agent, just smile in the inside and have a warm feeling, because they can't take you. The tribunal's about landlord and tenant, not about us. We have to go to the EAB, so they can report you there if they want. Okay. Are there any questions? Nothing. You're so sharp. Lacquer. Are you all still here? Are you smiling? Okay, rentals are going well. Now listen, there's one last thing before I pack it up. The rentals now. People that are phoning for rentals now say, I'd like to take this on the 1st of February because I'm moving and nobody wants to move over Christmas. Just be careful of saying, of putting those people aside, because you're trying to find a tenant now to fill it 15th of December or the 1st of January, and you want the money and the landlord wants it filled. And we start pushing away those people. I don't want the next year people, I want this year people. Be careful of that, because the reality is most people that are organized don't want to move on the 1st of January because it's the middle of holidays and it's a pain. So many leases run from sort of February. So you are going to get people now that want it in February. Take them, present it to the landlord and let it happen. Because why? It's going to be hard to fill a place from the 1st of January. But don't push those people away. Just remember, it's like sales. You present the offers. As long as the technical stuff is right, as long as the guy's got the money, he is able to rent, all the stuff ties up, present the offer. It doesn't matter if it's March and it rents half of what's offered. Present it to the landlord. Landlords, you don't know what's going on in their lives, man. Some of these places have been standing empty for a year now. Literally, I've got a place that's been standing empty for 6 months. You know, that's 75,000 Rand a person's lost in their head for rental. They will take a rental. They will take a crack. And Wade is going to rent it out today. I know you are, Wade. Are you? Thank you. I don't know what to say to these people anymore. Okay. Wade, help me. Okay. So, no more questions? Good. Excellent. This will be the last rental training this year because we've only got about 12 days of the year left, the working days. So have a nice time, and let's do about 10 rentals each before the end of the year. Come on, make your Christmas worthwhile. Have a nice day. Go do some rentals.